Will Huggins is an assistant professor of finance and business economics at McMaster University. Joins us to talk about it. Will, good afternoon.
Hey, how are you, Mike?
I'm doing all right, thank you, sir. How are you?
I can't complain. It's a nice day outside.
It is. And you know what? We can focus on things like that instead of the sticker shock we still seem to be feeling at grocery stores, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It doesn't really change the pain that people feel in their wallet, but a little bit of extra vitamin D from the sun helps.
I get the sense here, Will, that we would love to have a scapegoat. Maybe that scapegoat's name is Galen Weston. I don't know. But is this idea of stabilizing prices as easy as a meeting like yesterday leads us to believe it might be?
I don't think so. I think it is a little bit of political performance sort of going on. And I don't say that as someone who's trying to, attack any particular party. I merely think that it's got a lot of bluster, but it's not likely to have a significant amount of impact. And the biggest reason for that, if you take a look over the last 3 years and the total amount of money that Canadians have spent on groceries, it's gone up pretty substantially, right? The average household spends about 15.5% more money on groceries than they did 3 years ago. But if you were to take a look at that time, like the total dollar amount Canadians are spending, and we were to strip out all of the profit made by all the grocery stores, prices would still be up in the range of 8 to 12%. That's the biggest thing people are missing about this, is that even if the grocery stores made zero profit for the last 3 years, food prices would still be up. It's obvious that it's not just the grocery stores raising prices that are causing this. We've got a supply side problem. And I think if we really want to address it, that's where we ought to be putting our effort.
Yeah.
The problem is we need more food.
See, and this is because what you're getting at there then really is the margins that grocery stores are collecting have not changed substantively.
Not much, right? Like in the States where you've got more competition, you generally see grocery stores having margins of like 2.5%. In Canada, we might get 3.5%. And people might say that's a much fatter margin. But even if we stripped Canadian grocers down to American-style high competition margins, we'd still have food inflation going on, and substantially. We just wouldn't be able to blame the grocery stores. So I think this is sort of a convenient thing. It's not that, I don't suspect grocery stores are moving their margins up a little bit, but they're also moving their businesses into higher margin products at the same time, right? Like when you go into Shoppers Drug Mart and you realize you can buy eggs at 2 a.m, it's because you pay more than you do at the grocery store.
So you're almost saying there, Will, I think that we're almost penalizing these grocers for doing business well, looking for those higher margin products that they can sell, for example.
Right. But the main issue here is that 80% of Canadians believe in the greedflation story. They believe that prices are higher because of greedy merchants. And it's because I don't think people have made a very good case for explaining the underlying issues, like the fact that fertilizers are much more expensive. They have gone up enormously in cost. The fuel that farmers pay, the cost of their labor, there's a backlog of machinery that's driven up their prices as well. So literally the cost of running a farm is up about 10 to 15%. And we'd be kind of remiss as consumers to ignore those higher costs and just pretend that chicken should stay cheap forever because that's the price I've paid without considering how we actually bring a chicken to the grocery store.
How do we go about attacking the supply side of this then?
In my opinion, I'm not really a food supply specialist, but I can say as a broad attack, I think that making an example of grocers is sort of the wrong policy. At the end of the day, I look at the numbers and there's not enough money to squeeze out of them to make a difference in people's pocket. But if we want to resolve supply side, I think the issue is that there are two major groups that the government needs to be talking to, which is food producers and food processors, to find out where their bottlenecks are, where they're feeling the pain. I would rather see governments spend money trying to enhance the amount of fertilizers we have access to, trying to find ways to improve labor shortages, trying to find ways to break open the backlog of machinery, of farm machinery production in particular, that we still have a 6-month backlog of. I think those areas would be a lot more productive. But the problem is people want a solution right now. They want a scapegoat right now. They don't want to hear about how we're going to start working on something that will resolve in a year. They want to know who's to blame right now, because it's definitely not them, and it must be someone immoral somewhere. So that's sort of the charade that's going on with the grocery stores right now. It wouldn't make a difference. Even if they had made no profits at all, we'd still have significant food inflation. People would still be feeling it every time they go in the grocery store.
And How much, if at all, does weather play a part in all of this? Because we've had our share of severe weather this year already.
Oh, yeah, it's a big deal. When we think about it, the U.S., like the southern western states in the U.S., have been in the middle of a 20-year drought. And it's pretty amazing that we've been able to keep food prices as under control as we have been under these conditions. We've had significant drought as well out on the western prairies in Canada, and that's led to a shift in terms of what crops will work best, what crops people choose to plant. So we've very much had climatological challenges as well. So there's a lot of factors that play into this. Yes, the grocery stores are keeping their margins healthy. Yes, we have climate change problems. Yes, we have supply chain issues. There's a lot of factors, but most people aren't interested in a complex argument.
One of the other parts...
truth of being an econ guy.
I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Oh, sorry, I said it's the unfortunate truth of being an econ guy is you can kind of see that there's like 5 or 6 moving parts instead of just one.
But you sum it up so well, because that's what we are looking for, right? We're looking for that single source solution. And frankly, I think it was rather performative yesterday to see what essentially amounted to a perp walk of grocery CEOs coming into these meetings in Ottawa, because that's going to be very politically expedient for the government of the day, for Canadians to see that.
Absolutely. An easy one, too. And it might be, I don't mean it to be a contentious issue, but like on average, we normally have about 400,000, 500,000 people move to Canada every year. Last year, we had 1.2 million people move in. So that's a lot more extra mouths above trend to feed. And I'm not trying to put the blame for food inflation on immigrants. That's ridiculous. That's not my point. The point is that you have to keep expanding supply if you're going to keep expanding demand. If you're going to have more and more people, which is great and solves a lot of our economic problems, we need to make more food. And that's why I think this is really a supply issue. We need to solve the issues that farmers and processors are having, because without that, everybody else along the value chain is just going to try to protect their margins. So if the costs go up at the farm, they're going to go up everywhere else along the value chain as well. We just don't buy from farmers directly, so we don't see that.
One of the other things that Francois-Philippe Champagne said yesterday that caught my attention is the strengthening, if you will, of the Competition Act. I mean, we do certainly have an oligopoly when it comes to groceries in Canada. Is there room for improvement there? Yes.
The broad truth of Canada as a whole is that the country is run by oligopolies and we have very concentrated corporate ownership, more so than in America. We have nice branding, but underneath the veneer of that, we have a handful of companies in most of our major industries, and they do earn higher profit margins than they do in a more competitive market like the U.S. 100%. Now, how much would that improve things for us as consumers? Even if we got a lot more competition, and I am absolutely all for it. I think that's a big problem for us as consumers in Canada, the oligopolies. But there's only so much to gain there. It's not like suddenly there's going to be, tons of money available for consumers. If we bring in a lot of competition, we might see the profit margins drop by a third or a quarter. But again, that really equates to about $2 billion, maybe $3 billion a year for the entire sector. I'm going to guess about $2 billion. And that saves Canadians maybe $100 a year when they spend about $4,000 each on groceries. So it's not insignificant. You'd save like 2% on your groceries every year if we had stronger competition, and that's not nothing. However, it's not the panacea that a lot of people imagine it is. What we're going to have to do, I think, in order to have a real impact on inflation on the grocery side is advance on many fronts. We're going to have to put a little bit of pressure on competition and margins. We're going to have to put a little bit of pressure on supply side issues. We're going to have to pay attention to all the moving parts instead of pretending that just pressing on one button over and over is going to solve the problem.
It is a really interesting conversation and a very complex issue that warrants a whole lot of scrutiny. Will, appreciate your perspective on this today. Thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely. Happy to help out anytime, Mike.